illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Alex Armstrong, and this is Alex Armstrong Tonight's Late Edition.
I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat, or I didn't sweat at the time.
Oh, I think you might be sweating tomorrow. We're in this together. Damning new emails reveal Prince Andrew lied in that infamous BBC interview, that clip we just showed, about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And
we will not raise tax on working people. No tax rises for income tax, for national insurance, for VAT. We will not raise income tax.
Oh, that's the biggest joke of the century, isn't it? Because they are coming for your taxes. Rachel Reeves seems to be embracing her inner Robin Hood as she looks to tax the rich to fill the budget black hole, the ballooning budget black hole, should I say. Also, the White House are furious with the United Kingdom over the China spy scandal that was revealed today, as the US warns of damaging intelligence sharing between Britain and the US might come to an end. Well, is there hope in the Middle East? The Prime Minister is set to travel to Egypt on Monday to attend the Gaza Peace Summit. That can only go really well, can't it? And tributes are pouring in from around the world for the celebrated actress Diane Keaton, who has sadly died aged 79 in California. And joining me this evening to talk about all of these hot headlines, former Scotland Yard detective Peter Bleksley, former Labour advisor Paul Richards, and GB News comedian Leo Kearse. But before we get stuck in, let's get your news with Aaron Armstrong.
Thanks, Alex. Good evening to you. Our top stories. New evidence has emerged that reveals Prince Andrew told the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, "We are in this together," 3 months after the date he claimed he'd cut all contact. The email was sent in February 2011, a day after the infamous photo emerged of Andrew with the late Virginia Giuffre, Epstein's most publicised victim. It appears to provide proof that the Prince lied when he told Newsnight his last contact with the convicted paedophile was in New York's Central Park in December 2010. The email in which Andrew told Epstein, "We'll play some more soon," was sent from his official account bearing the automatic signature HRH, the Duke of York. Epstein's address, listed as the recipient, has been officially verified. Donald Trump will visit Israel on Monday before travelling to Egypt for a peace summit with other world leaders to focus on an agreement to end the war in Gaza. The US president was cheered by huge crowds in Hostages Square in Tel Aviv earlier. Well, the crowds were addressed by two of the architects of the ceasefire deal, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner, along with Kushner's wife Ivanka Trump. The US president's visit to the Middle East will coincide with the scheduled release of hostages held by Hamas, after which Israel will free thousands of Palestinian prisoners. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, will also attend the summit. Witkoff says the US president is owed deep gratitude and that he has dreamed of this night.
We stand here tonight, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and people from every corner of the world, united by one shared prayer for peace. Tonight, we celebrate something extraordinary, a moment that many thought was impossible. Yet here we stand, living proof that when courage meets conviction, miracles can happen.
Palestinian officials say more than 500,000 people have returned to Gaza City, with thousands more travelling north. Rescue teams have begun recovering bodies from ruined buildings. Authorities there believe almost 10,000 people remain unaccounted for. Aid agencies have called for crossings into Gaza to be reopened to allow more humanitarian supplies in. 2 men have been arrested on suspicion of murder after the death in prison of the former Lost Prophets frontman Ian Watkins. The paedophile rock star was serving a 29-year sentence for child sex offences. He was attacked with a knife at Wakefield Prison earlier this morning. Emergency services were called, but Watkins was pronounced dead at the scene. No survivors are expected to be found after a major explosion at a munitions factory in the US state of Tennessee. 18 people remain unaccounted for. It's still unclear what caused yesterday's explosion at the plant, which is southwest of Nashville. It specialised in the development and manufacture of explosives. And finally, some sad news. Celebrated actress Diane Keaton has died at the age of 79. Keaton rose to fame in the 1970s, winning an Oscar for Annie Hall in one of her many collaborations with Woody Allen. She also starred in The Godfather, Baby Boom, First Wives Club and Something's Gotta Give. The actor hadn't been in the public eye for some months, but no illness had been announced. She is survived by her 2 children. And those are your headlines. Now it's back to Alex.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Well, what a bunch of front pages we have to talk about. Shall we just go over them very quickly, shall we? The Independent bring them home. Now, of course, they're leading on the hostage release that we're expecting to happen over this weekend into Monday. The Daily Express, Reeves eyes $7 billion pensions tax raid. The Observer, the burden of hope, of course, leading there with Palestinians returning to Gaza. The Mirror, rocket fiend stabbed to death in prison. The Sun, we're in this together. Of course, it's bombshell revelations on Epstein and Andrew. The Telegraph, Reeves will tax the rich to fill black hole. The Daily Mail, Andrew to Epstein, we are in this together. And the Times, White House anger over UK spy case fiasco. Right, let's go through all of these headlines with my brilliant panel. Former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley, former Labour advisor Paul Richards, and comedian Leo Curse. Leo, where shall we start, hey? Do you fancy a bit of Andrew bashing?
Yeah, well, I don't want to bash him. I mean, like, as far as I'm concerned, he's still an innocent man. He hasn't been found guilty of a crime in any court. And, you know, I think if anything, the royal family is dragging him into disrepute. I think, you know, other people in the royal family with their close associations with Jimmy Savile and senior members of the Labour Party are in much worse positions than him. And also, you know, he's a prince. He's a prince. You know, if anybody's allowed to go to a billionaire island and get up to it. And also, when he was on that island, I mean, he must have looked to one side, seen Bill Gates, looked to the other side, seen Bill Clinton, looked ahead of him, seen Stephen Hawking and think, well, this must be all right.
It's a good point, isn't it? And this is the problem with all this stuff, is it was very, it was OK back in the day to do these things, because there was no social media. They never thought they'd get caught out, and they never thought their emails were going to get released, which, of course, is pretty damning. You know, this is the thing, Paul, because everyone, I think, back in the day might have assumed that your emails was private as burning a letter after you've received it. And, of course, he's been exposed now because he went on the BBC and said he hadn't cut contact with him, only to find out that there's an email been sent off not long after that photo.
I mean, it does seem, doesn't it, from our early reading of this, that he has lied
on
camera to the BBC in that landmark interview with Emily Maitlis. You know, maybe they'll deny this was a real email. I don't know. They'll try and come up with some sort of defence. But to me, on the evidence presented thus far, it looks like he's been telling lies.
Peter?
Every keystroke leaves a trace, and anybody with half a brain has known that since the advent of the internet and emails and all that kind of stuff. But maybe Andrew hasn't got half a brain. And of course, yes, this entirely innocent man who paid how much? 12 million quid to settle a civil case? Yeah, the whiff of corruption, privilege, law-breaking, proven or unproven, the stench is unbearable.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Go on, Ian. Do you want to jump to this?
Well, no, just say, I mean, he told Jeffrey Epstein we're in this together, allegedly. I mean, that's just standing by a friend. I mean, you know, shouldn't he show some solidarity? Honestly, and I would lie to Emily Maitlis to protect one of my friends as well.
Which just likes Emily Maitlis because it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look what the news agents, look what her podcast have done. They've deflected from the grooming gangs, said, you know, downplayed the situation with the grooming gangs. So which is who's really telling the bigger lie?
Yeah, well, this is the thing, right, because I think the public get really frustrated. No matter what happens, right, I think the public get really frustrated because clearly something has happened. And we also do know Jeffrey Epstein is responsible for some pretty horrendous stuff. I don't need to go into, obviously, everyone knows this story by now. It's been a massive, massive scandal. And it's touched every single elite, hasn't it? This is the problem. All of the elites, all of the people who are sort of these socialites who hung around in New York and they hung around in Britain, some of them, everyone's been touched by it. We even saw, in fact, I'm not going to say because I need to actually check this, so I only get sued if I say out actually on TV without checking my facts. But this is the problem, isn't it? Because now with your digital footprint, Leo, no one's safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, the 90s, I mean, I'm not talking about, you know, crimes such as this, but even, you know, celebrities cheating on their partners. I don't think they can get away with it anymore because there's cameras everywhere, everybody's got social media, and everybody wants to make a quick buck selling that story. So, you know, you're not gonna be able to do it anymore. And, you know, I quite like Chris Rock's defence for cheating on his wife. He basically said, I had the opportunity. You know, I'm getting criticised by all these guys who didn't have the opportunity. They don't have all these like women hitting on them, and it's like, yeah, you try not cheating on your wife with that level of opportunity.
Yeah. What was Mrs. Rock's response to that?
I think they'd already divorced at that point.
No worries there. Yeah, no worries there then, obviously. All right, let's move on to another story because we haven't spoken about this yet, and I'm sure you're all very keen to find out whether Rachel Reeves. We've got two tax stories here, so maybe we'll start with the Telegraph because we haven't touched the Telegraph yet. Let's move on to the Sunday Telegraph. Reeves will tax the rich to fill the black hole. Rachel Reeves has signalled the better off will be forced to contribute more as she prepares to raise taxes at the budget. Paul, I'm sorry, I know you're going to have to defend this. If she goes for a sort of Robin Hood wealth tax, it's just going to signal the end of the final two people who've got money in this country, perhaps.
I mean, the source for this story is our old friend Treasury Sources, which could be anybody from the cleaner through to, you know, the top of the organisation. Could be anybody all along there. And it's just the typical thing. There's a choreography of this ahead of a budget where trails and leaks and hints and sometimes genuine facts get into the mix. We don't know, do we, until it happens. To your point on wealth taxes, though, I mean, it depends what you mean by a wealth tax, because there's lots of different ways of doing it. But,
the words that have been described by Treasury Sources, as you correctly say, the better off.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't mean anything, does it? It's just a trail. She has ruled out the idea of a wealth tax, you know, in its strictest, like the Green Party would advocate, because we know that would put down growth and it would mean people leave the country and all the rest of it. So I don't think we're going to see anything Marxist and dramatic. But the Labour Party is locked into saying we're not increasing national insurance or income tax or VAT, so something's going to have to give somewhere, and that's what's going to be, you know, in the budget when we see it.
I don't buy it. I don't trust them because look, they have no headroom. The headroom is gone. We know the black hole is double in size. Peter, I mean, do you trust Labour not to raise people's taxes within the next 3 years of Parliament before on a general election?
Well, Paul, people are already leaving the country. The evidence is clear.
People are coming as well. Lots of Americans.
Yeah, on rubber dinkies. 1,659 in the last 3 days, 2,213 last week.
Lots of Americans
so it goes on. You know, you ask you how your smashing of the gangs is getting on.
No, but you said we wanted lots more Americans, and they are arriving.
People are
rich people are coming
the country.
too.
Wealthy people are leaving the country.
And arriving.
What deeply concerns me is the racist language around this economic hole. Why can't it be a red hole? Right? Because if you go into the red, red. You go into the red.
It should be a red hole, really.
Surely it should be a red hole.
Yeah.
If we're not careful, we'll end up having to pay reparations for this, formerly known as a black hole.
I think you might be right. We'll look back on this in anger, won't we? Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, Leo, because we've all been told we're not going to get taxed more. And Paul, the nuance around that, because you know it's politics talk, isn't it? It's like what they mean is there's going to be some taxes that they won't raise, but on working people, which they can never seem to define anyway. But that doesn't mean that these stealth taxes are off the cards, does it?
Yeah, and also this looks like another thing. Like Labour keep trying to introduce taxes, like they wanted to cut the winter fuel allowance, which actually kind of makes sense. But they fumbled it and they didn't sell it properly, and it was only going to save the country a few billion anyway.
Yeah.
You know,
I love how we just chuck that around. A few billion.
Well, the size of the deficit is so insane. Our interest payments each year, just the payment on the interest on the country's debt, is £158 billion a year. So, I mean, this $7 billion is nothing. It's dust in the wind. And it's still going to be fumbled. There's going to be a big backlash. They're going to have to roll back on it. It's insane. What they need to do is cut public spending. Yeah. Because when the government spends money, it just wastes it. It doesn't create anything with it. It's just, at best, a Keynesian stimulus. You're basically paying people to dig holes and fill them in again. Whereas if the private sector can keep that money, if these people can keep that money in their pensions, their pension fund managers will invest that in businesses that will create jobs, create growth, create new productivity. And if the government is serious about wanting to kickstart the economy, they need to slash regulation. It's far too expensive to start a business in this country because you can't take that risk because you've got to pay so much. If the business fails, you've got to pay so much to lay people off.
And go to a garden centre, go to a cafe, go to a pub that does food on a weekday lunchtime, and a huge proportion of people in there spending money are pensioners. You go punishing them and making them less well off, then they won't be able to spend their money. They are propping up the economy to a huge degree.
Absolutely. Well, I want to dig in because this is the front page of the Sunday Express here. We've sort of pivoted on because there's very similar stories. The Telegraph, of course, reporting that Rachel Reeves wants sort of Robin Hood tax. The Sunday Express is saying, well, she's also coming after pensioners. And that wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise you at home, I'm sure. We want to talk about that more very soon. But coming up, the White House is apparently furious over the China case fiasco. That spy scandal won't go away for Keir Starmer. We broke it last weekend. Could we be breaking the government's downfall next weekend? Who knows? More on that after the break. This is Alex Armstrong Tonight, late edition.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
My dad used to play it constantly, you know, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Matt Monroe, Sammy Davis Jr., you name it, I mean, all of them. And I came home one afternoon after school and he had this song playing. It was called Special Angel by Malcolm Bourne. And it caught my interest. And since then I asked him for a CD, like, you know, a swing CD, and I got it for Christmas. And I was listening to it all the time, and it became a thing, and I started to sing along and got used to it and just really enjoyed it. So it's been my life, really. It has been my life.
I suppose the thing about swing is you've got so many really good songs.
Yeah.
What do you pick?
They're only 2 minutes, 3 minutes long songs, so if you've got to do an hour's set, there's plenty of songs there, to fill that. You can't just do 10 like pop songs today. You know, they're all 2 minutes 30. I think Fly Me to the Moon.
So did you go, have I got a story with that one? Or is it...
Oh, it's always... Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. It's always about a story. Yeah, it's... any song that I ever choose for any show that I ever do has either got a memory or a story behind it. Because, yeah, swing's been my life, you know what I mean? So I've never sort of drifted anywhere else. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
What I find fascinating with this sort of music, though, is that it's... I mean, it's old now.
Yeah.
It doesn't age.
Well, that's the beauty of it, you know. I think for many years, all these songs, you know, people have covered them. Certainly myself, I have too. My first album was, wow, a long time ago. And
that was called My Way, wasn't it?
Doing It My Way, yes,
Yeah.
it was, yeah. And so for me, all these songs that have been my life since I was a little boy, I've grew up with them, and they don't get old, and they never will. And it takes somebody for myself, you know, like myself, to continue them on. You know, Michael Bublé did it, Robbie Williams did it, and I'm still doing it, you know.
The People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to the show. Loads more news to dig into, by the way. There's some really interesting stuff on the Telegraph. Ministers ordering crackdown on hate preachers. I'll dig into that with you. Russia may be linked to the JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, cyber attack, intelligence on the Chinese embassy. Loads more to talk about. But first, we're going to get stuck in with journalist and free speech advocate Candice Holdsworth. Candice, thank you so much for joining me. I really want to talk to you about this China scandal. Not quite the one I was alluding to there, but the White House are apparently furious with Downing Street over this fiasco because, of course, you know, Trump is big on cracking down on China, isn't he? And they've done the exact opposite to that. What should we read into on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is really big. This puts Britain in a very tricky position because America is one of our closest allies, you know, the Five Eyes network, if not our closest ally. And they are putting, as part of the America First agenda, huge amounts of pressure on China right now. And they are basically saying to Britain, you've got to choose, you know, who are you with? The problem is, though, this Labour government, they need the investment from China, particularly in the area of renewables. I mean, this is what they're really, really going for under Ed Miliband. Plus the fact that China has huge investments in major British industries. We are in a real pickle. I don't know how we're going to solve this. I think that this is a real crisis in the making.
I certainly agree with you, Candice, because, of course, as you alluded to there, even on nuclear plants, the Chinese have investments in that. These solar panels come with some sort of off switch, which has been reported before. We have just gone cap in hand to China at a time when relations with China are frostier than ever. Of course, there's all this warmongering going on. Have we just become over-reliant on the Chinese throughout the decades? And, of course, I'm not just blaming the Labour government for this, because I look back and I've been very critical of David Cameron as Prime Minister, because he also threw his hat in with them too and sold off massive swathes of our industry and invited the Chinese in. And, of course, then we had the Huawei scandal, which was off the back of the Cameron years. We seem to have gone head first into one of our greatest and future adversaries.
Yes, I think there was some naivety with China. I think that there was a thinking, particularly around the David Cameron era, that China would, as it grew wealthier, it would liberalize and it would start to look like all the other Western democracies. But we know that hasn't happened. I mean, it still has a very much a statist, authoritarian government, very, very different to the norms and standards that we have in the West. And obviously, you know, with the US and China, they're becoming increasingly adversarial. Maybe that was not such a wise bet. I mean, there were people at the time who warned against it, who said it's not going to change. The CCP is not going to change.
Yeah.
China is what it is, right?
Yeah.
We're in it's a big problem. You know, Britain is not the wealthy world power that it once was, and it's sort of finding itself now caught between these two massive superpowers and not knowing where to turn.
Yeah, it's shocking stuff. I mean, I think we really made some terrible foreign affairs judgments back in the day, and still to this day. Let's go to the Sunday Express, shall we, Candice? Because many people at home, maybe pensioners watching, and they'll be getting more and more worried. They've already been worried quite a lot over the last year over the sort of threats by the government to go after pensioners. We're seeing this rhetoric against pensioners who've contributed so much to this country over decades, heating up all the time on many different sides of the political spectrum, by the way. But here, the Sunday Express are saying Rachel Reeves is eyeing up £7 billion in tax raids. That is very, very concerning to the average Brit, is it not?
It really is. I mean, this is a government that's just scrambling. I mean, they have no idea what they're doing. They've pretty much broken every promise that they made before the election. Rachel Reeves' incredibly foolish tax on jobs, which meant growth has halved since then. It's absolutely halved. And that's what they need, because our borrowing is spiraling out of control. We're spending insane amounts on welfare, which the Labour Party have just found impossible to reform. So what do they have left? And I think that there's real thinking within the Labour Party and on the left more broadly that pensioners are very wealthy, that the old have too much money and it's time for some redistribution. And the problem is the average pensioner is not as mobile as, say, a multimillionaire or a billionaire, many of whom have gone off to Dubai. They're taking their wealth and their money with them because they don't want it to be used for this. So I don't know what they're going to do. You know, these are people who've worked their whole lives and they're just being milked. And I think that this happens under every single Labour government. We see this. You know, it happened in the 1970s and you saw a huge exodus of people who left the country, basically, because they were tired of that. You don't value me and you just milk me. And I think this is what pensioners are going through right now. And they're really being demonised by the left, I think.
Yeah, and, you know, even me, I'm 34 years old, I worry, like, what's the point? Looking forward to even a state pension. What's the point? It just looks so unlikely with all this rhetoric against pensioners. You know, I don't think I'll ever be a pensioner because I don't think there'll be any pensions left with the absolute state of our economy. What's the point? This is why so many young people are also going, do you know what? It's just not worth working here anymore. I pay all that tax. It just goes into more black hole, ideological spending on nonsense. What's the point? And on that topic, I don't know if you've seen this story, Candice, as well, because just very briefly on the front page of the Telegraph here, Rachel Reeves is potentially eyeing up a Robin Hood tax on the wealthy to fill the black hole, which they are going to supposedly blame on Nigel Farage and Brexit. You can't make it up, can you?
It's nuts. I mean, it's desperate stuff. I mean, the wealth taxes do not work. The problem is that a lot of people who propose them, they don't think in those terms. They don't think, will it bring more money in? They just think it's the moral thing to do or the right thing to do. But if we look all around the world, wherever wealth taxes have been tried, they've always had to be reversed. Because what happens is wealthy people, like I said before, refuse to be milked, and they leave the country and they take their wealth with them. And that's what happens. Even countries like Norway, who still have it, the returns are really, really modest. You never end up bringing in much money and you end up losing so much as well. And also kind of what happens is you create this sort of very toxic environment for entrepreneurs and for people who create wealth. And they really do feel that they're not valued, that they're just being used. And this is what's happened in countries like Norway. I mean, you know, there was a Norwegian entrepreneur who recently went really viral on Twitter talking about that, how the Socialist Party in his country actually put him on a wall of shame. This is a person who's creating jobs. These are the sorts of people we need, but that's what happens. And I think in all the debates I have with people about the wealth tax, the thing that always strikes me is that they never talk about whether or not it will actually work. They just like the idea of taxing the rich.
Absolutely agreed with you there, Candice. Thank you so much for joining me. That's journalist and free speech advocate Candice Holdsworth. Brilliant stuff there. We'll bring back my panel here, Leo Kirst, Paul Richards and Peter Blexley. I want to hone in on this Sunday Express front page because it is important. It is important to millions and millions of people because we are in a desperate economic state, aren't we? We are dire. And the Chancellor is scraping around for the bottom of the barrel. And stuff. You said this before the break, Leo. 7 billion doesn't even touch the sides.
Oh, yeah, and it'll be another thing that gets rolled back and they'll just borrow more money. At some point, the bond markets will stop lending Britain money. They'll say, you know, you're spending like a drunk sailor. Yeah. You've already had a lot of money. You're not getting any more, and then we'll have to go to the IMF for a bailout. It'll be like the 70s all over again, except, you know, this time with a lot of, you know, sectarian conflict inside the country. Oh, it's going to be wonderful. I mean, how wonderfully well the country's been managed for the last few decades. But yeah, our welfare and pension spending is £384 billion a year. We really need to, you know, make cuts to that and raise the retirement age as well. Maybe don't cut pensions, but people just work a bit longer. We're never supposed to be retired for 30 years. You know, you're supposed to draw your pension and then, you know, have the good grace to drop dead. Yeah.
Or just die before you even get it. Why not make it 100 and see jackpot lottery? If you live to 100 years, you get 100 million quid. There you go. That's an idea for Rachel Reeves. Maybe she'll like that one, Paul.
I'm struggling to find the source of this story.
Well, it is a front page, of course. We'll have to wait till we get to page 4, but they are saying it's an exclusive.
In the second paragraph, it says experts. Well, we all know about them, and there's no source for it whatsoever. So it's an interesting debate to have, but it's based on froth. This is not an official announcement.
So where do you think Mr. Kerrs has nailed it, all right? Cutting public spending is the key.
But we've tried that.
Yeah, I know, and your left-wing backbenchers wouldn't allow you to do it. You tried it on welfare, and you got completely done over by your lunatic lefty backbencher
I'm
nut
talking about Cameron and Osborne.
But, so let's look at public spending briefly.
Because that did work. It was COVID that destroyed all of that. But yes, carry on, Peter.
Look at public spending, if we may. Brief example, something I've heard about from a very informed source this week. There's some new thing that I've heard about called PDA, which kids apparently suffer from, right? It's all pathological defiance, something or other, right? So it's all about kids who have never been taught about the word no. They've never been taught the meaning of that, and consequently they misbehave themselves frequently, OK? And it is a registered thing. There's thousands of kids now getting diagnosed with this, you see. And, of course, what parents want is the kid to get a diagnosis, right? Because then they qualify for an allowance, for a benefit. Then, of course, the parent qualifies for a carer's allowance. Then, of course, the parent might qualify for a motability car, and so it goes, and so it goes. Doctors, medical professionals need to get a grip.
Yeah, I totally agree. Listen, we've got loads more coming up. Coming up next...
I don't think there's going to be anyone in Philly who's beating me on these steps today. I'm offering everyone out.
Look at that, it's going to be sensational, isn't it? Ben Leo's been in Philadelphia challenging America to the famous Rocky Challenge, as well as exposing the massive crisis in their city. God's work, isn't it? This is Alex Armstrong tonight, late edition.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Storm Alice continues to bring heavy thundery rain to eastern parts of Spain, including the Balearics. Some places could see 50 to 100 millimetres of rain in just a few hours, and these totals will continue to build up for a little while yet. Eventually it is going to ease and clear away, and actually elsewhere there's a lot of fine sunny weather across much of southern Europe as we go through Sunday and into the beginning of next week. Always in the sunshine, feeling pretty warm. See you later.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again and welcome to your latest GB News weather update from the Met Office. The dry weather continues for most of us through the course of this weekend. There will be some fog around overnight tonight, but as we go through Sunday, the sunshine will break through once again. And high pressure is really dominating the UK's weather through the next few days, centred slap bang across the middle of the UK, so bringing light winds and dry weather for many. Northern Scotland, though, will see a bit of light rain and drizzle through the course of this evening and into the early hours of Sunday morning, but otherwise a mixture of cloud and clear spells. Where the clear skies do persist for any length of time, we'll see temperatures drop down into low single figures perhaps in rural spots, but there'll also be some mist and fog developing. We think most likely in parts of England and Wales, but southern Scotland could also see some fog patches by the end of the night as well. In the south of the UK, it's perhaps more likely to be a mixture of mist and low clouds, so a murky start to the day for many. Some sunshine, though, for West Wales and northern England, although there will be some fog around here, particularly in the Vale of York. Cloudy skies for Northern Ireland and certainly across northern Scotland. Still quite gloomy conditions here. Areas of low cloud and mist around across the hills and around the coast as well, with some bits and pieces of light rain and drizzle perhaps still possible. Through the day, though, I am expecting that cloud in the south and the fog to lift. So, generally, by the afternoon, a brighter story for many of us. Some sunshine for many too. Generally tending to hold on to a bit more in the way of cloud, probably for Northern Ireland, and certainly across northern Scotland, still a bit gloomy here with some bits and pieces of rain. Temperatures though in the best of the sunshine, 16 to 18 degrees Celsius, so feeling pleasant for October. More in the way of cloud, generally speaking, across England and Wales by Monday. That cloud potentially thick enough to give the odd spit or spot of light rain or drizzle in the breeze, but most places staying dry. Plenty of sunshine for Scotland and perhaps northern England, but generally through the week ahead we are expecting to see quite a bit of cloud for most of us, and temperatures around the seasonal normal but slightly below in places.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to the show, and joining me now ahead of the Late Show live at midnight tonight is GB News' Ben Leo. What's coming up on the show tonight, Ben? And I love that little clip of you in Philly. That looked brilliant.
Yeah, hello Alex. I've literally just got in the door from Philly, so I'm a bit frazzled, I'm feeling a bit flustered, but hopefully everything will be just fine. We're in Philadelphia primarily because I went down to the infamous Kensington Avenue, which is one of the most saddest, humbling streets I've ever been to in the world, actually. It's one of the most drug-addled streets in America. People there are addicted to fentanyl, to a drug called tranq, which is pretty problematic in the United States. And I spoke to the people who frequent the streets, basically to find out their stories, how they ended up on the streets and in that predicament, and also question the likes of UK policy as well. For example, in the likes of Glasgow and Scotland, they have, of course, drug consumption rooms where people, users up in Glasgow, can congregate and consume drugs in a so-called safe environment and get clean needles and so on, and ask whether that kind of public health drug policy is enabling drug use or whether it's something we need to continue with. Whilst I was in Philadelphia, on the way out, I went to, of course, I had to do it, the famous stairs of Philadelphia City Hall, where Rocky, of course, scaled the stairs. And whilst I was there, I had a bit of fun. I decided to fly the flag for Great Britain and race as many Americans as I could up and down the top of the stairs. Here's a little flavour of what happened. Four out of four. Thank you, man. Good race.
What can we say? I
Good
think
job.
y'all are healthier.
I'll do. Undefeated on the streets of Philadelphia, taking home for Britain. So yes, we've been busy in Philadelphia today. We're back in Washington, DC. And Alex, of course, the big story is Prince Andrew breaking tonight really bombshell damning emails, which I would argue puts his future as a royal completely under the spotlight. Should he be stripped of his royal titles? Should he be given the boot from Royal Lodge in Great Windsor Park? Should he be exiled? Is it about time they finally cut Andrew loose? It's a big headache for King Charles and to me, Prince William, who has shown absolute disdain for his uncle over recent months and years. I mean, you see the public images of him refusing to even talk to his uncle at public engagements. I think William had the right idea, Alex.
I totally agree. I just want to say to the audience watching that it's so important because what is happening in America, we are only a few years behind. And having lived in America myself, I know Ben is basically being a bit of a prophet over there. He's showing you what's going to happen to our country if we don't get to grips with things. But Ben, I also want to draw attention to this story because this has sent the audience here in meltdown because White House seemed to be absolutely furious with Downing Street over this China spy scandal. What is going on, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, the word on the street from Washington is that, you know, although Keir Starmer and President Trump seem to get on publicly, President Trump is always very polite to him, isn't he? Like the likes of Turnberry and Chequers when they did the public engagements, and even the Oval Office as well. President Trump's always, you know, very diplomatic and kind in public. Word on the street is this administration think Keir Starmer is incompetent, to say the least. A bit of a liability when it comes to national security to do with the United States, intelligence sharing, and the UK as well. So this China story going to be causing all sorts of headaches for not just Keir Starmer and the Labour government, but the Trump administration here. Again, when you think of the likes of the Chagos Islands, all the chaos and the confusion to do with the Chagos Islands, did the US approve of it or not? Was Trump approving of it or not? Did Secretary of State Marco Rubio want us to hand over the Chagos Islands? It just adds to the mix where you kind of get the vibe that this administration here look across the pond to Keir Starmer and his government and think, goodness me, you guys are a bit of a liability.
Yeah, and where's your loyalties lie? You know, if I was the American president, I'd be asking, where are your loyalties? I mean, as you said, they were not happy originally with the Chagos deal. And I'm sure the Prime Minister gave loads of reassurances to the Americans over that. And then now they're looking at it going, actually, do you think maybe they were a bit beholden to China over it and they were trying to sweeten the Chinese up? I'm sure those are the sort of questions they'll be asking over there. Just briefly, just give the audience, Ben, a little bit of insight to what it's like on the streets of Philadelphia where you've been, because we could see a similar drug crisis happening here in Britain. I mean, I'm starting to see some zombies walking around late at night when I leave the studio here. And how far away is that from becoming reality? I mean, it's a pretty big reality in America, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the number one public health issue. It's an absolute crisis. The number one drug here, of course, is fentanyl, which the UK doesn't seem to have much of a problem with. You know, China, I mean, talking about China, China is the country who fentanyl originates from. They're the ones pretty much indirectly importing it into the United States via Mexico and the drug cartels south of the border. So fentanyl is the big one. People, I mean, I spoke to a lady in San Francisco some months ago who said she worked for Amazon. She was on about $400,000 a year, high-flying career, top job. She had 3 children. She just had her 4th child, and she had a cesarean section, and the doctors gave her a very strong opioid. I think it was oxycodone or something similar. Totally unneeded. She said she would have been fine with paracetamol or ibuprofen. She was put onto this opioid. She got addicted to it, and eventually ended up just 12 months later on the streets, addicted to fentanyl, to heroin. So it just goes to show it's not people necessarily from troubled childhoods who have had childhood trauma, who maybe run away from home and get involved in wrong crowds. It can happen to anybody. And one gentleman I spoke to today in Philadelphia, in Kensington Avenue, which I said is the most infamous, saddening, tragic, humble street I've ever been to in my life, just littered with human tragedy, just people folded over like pretzels because they've done so much drugs, they don't know what's going on, they've been there for maybe 10, 20 years. One guy I spoke to was a millionaire property investor. He said he had 35 properties. He said claimed his friend set him up, so he ended up in jail, and when he was in prison, he got involved in drugs. Where is he now? He's in Kensington Avenue doing fentanyl with scores of other addicts. So it can happen to anybody, and it's a massive, well, I'd say the number one public health crisis in the United States, and it's a human tragedy. It really, I left that place today, I left Philadelphia, humbled, completely saddened, and I felt pretty depressed, actually.
Yeah, it's exceptionally sad. I think we've got to send you out to Skid Row next, Ben, actually. I mean, that's a shocker, that one. What else is coming up, Ben?
What else is coming up? We have a really interesting debate. So there was, of course, Ian Watkins from Lost Prophets was murdered in prison today. If viewers aren't familiar with Lost Prophets, they're a Welsh sort of punk rock band from back in the 2000s. I was a massive fan of Lost Prophets. And when it came out that Ian Watkins was a disgusting, depraved paedophile, and I won't say any more than that because the crimes he was found guilty of were sickening, some of the worst crimes possible involving babies and so on. I couldn't listen to their music again. I just couldn't bring myself to listen to their music, despite being a fan previously. So he's been murdered in prison today by some lag. Oh well, good riddance, I guess, don't really care. But the interesting debate off the back of that is, should we still be listening? Can we listen to music from disgraced, tainted artists? So the likes of Ian Watkins, Lost Prophets, maybe even Gary Glitter, or what about R. Kelly, Michael Jackson, of course, as well. I've got my own thoughts about Michael Jackson. I don't really think he was a paedophile, but if people do think he was a paedophile, Are they okay still listening to his music? I just thought it was a fascinating debate. Actually, I want to know your thoughts, Alex. Can we listen to these people, or should we be shunning them after death because of their crimes and behaviour?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, Ben. It's a really difficult one. I think there are certainly some limits. I mean, Michael Jackson, I just think he's timeless. I think it's really hard not to listen to Michael Jackson, but there we go. Well, look, listen, everyone, stay tuned for Ben Leo tonight. It's going to be a sensational show this evening. I really think you should tune in, because you never know what this could be heading next to Britain, a lot of this stuff. Thanks, Ben. Coming up, breaking this evening, the Prime Minister is heading to the Middle East. Sir Keir Starmer will fly to an international peace summit in Egypt. All the details will be coming shortly. Will he ever just come back to the UK? This man seems to be constantly abroad, doesn't he? This is Alex Armstrong Tonight, late edition.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, this Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody. Sir Keir Starmer, he's off again. He loves a plane, doesn't he? He loves to keep on never touching British soil as often as he can. Well, he's going to fly to an international peace summit in Egypt as part of efforts to secure the fragile ceasefire agreed in Gaza. The Prime Minister is expected to pay particular tribute to Donald Trump, who is reportedly due to attend the gathering also, and the diplomatic work of Egypt, Qatar and Turkey. Downing Street said a signing ceremony for the Gaza peace plan will take place at the event to mark a turning point for the Middle East after 2 years of war. Number 10 have said the US president's 20-point plan calls for Israel to maintain an open-ended military presence inside Gaza along its border with Israel. I mean, all of that aside, I mean, I don't know how much credit Keir Starmer can take for this. I just think he's thought, oh, that's another opportunity for me not to be here.
You think he's just trying to get as many air miles racked up until he has to walk the plank?
He's got a state visit, then we cancel PMQs, don't have to be around for that. Oh, yeah, we've got to fly off to Windy Labour Party conference. The man ever going to be held accountable?
Well, yeah, I mean, people criticise Keir Starmer, but I think he's the best Prime Minister Hamas have ever had. And, I mean, to be fair, his diplomacy with Donald Trump has actually been one of the high points of his premiership.
Yes.
He's handled Trump very well, and I think you know, the way he's praising Trump and you know, making sure everybody knows that, you know, Trump is largely responsible for this peace deal is fantastic. And I can't believe Trump was overlooked for the Nobel Peace Prize. It's like, how many wars has he got to end before he, you know, I'd give him the Nobel Chemistry Prize as well for turning liberals into puddles of tears.
Paul, I mean, to go back to my point, he's done nothing on this peace deal, has he? What has he done to deserve? In fact, if anything, he frustrated it. He's the one who declared that Palestine was a state with no plan. I mean, he gave even Hamas praised him, which I think was a terrible idea, wasn't it? I mean, what has he done to deserve to be at the signing ceremony?
Well,
processing.
I'm just thinking, well, why shouldn't he be there? He's our Prime Minister. It's quite a
why shouldn't I be there?
Because you're not the Prime Minister, that's why.
No, but I mean, what has the Prime Minister done? He's just taken credit for everything.
He's not taking credit for it. He's representing us on the world stage, which is what he's doing.
Secure peace in the Middle East. That's what he's going to write in his memoirs, isn't
I think it's entirely reasonable he's there. He's not, you know, he's not settling in. He's only there for 5 hours and come home.
He's a glory seeker, and he's going there for a photo opportunity.
Certainly not. No, I think that's fair. And on the world stage, he is actually quite respected, I'm afraid to say. You know, I know this will trigger you all, but look at the trade deals. US, UK, India trade deals. You know, these are good, big global things he's done.
Yeah, well, he's had to bend over the country backwards to achieve it. That's the problem, isn't it?
Look at the incredible work he's done for Afghan smuggling gangs. I mean, it's...
I wonder if it was... But this is the thing...
And what about that? And you mentioned Trump. Look at the relationship with Trump, and there's not many could have pulled that off.
No, but I mean, Trump's also furious with him behind closed doors. The great thing about Donald Trump is that he knows how to charm. He knows how to get people to bend over for him, and that's exactly what we've done, hasn't it? Trump knows he's got to make Keir Starmer not look like a fool. Hence why, I mean, you can see the front page of the Sunday Times. So they're furious in the White House over his botched handling of China. But Peter, you know, I think this whole peace deal thing that Keir Starmer's going to go to, I think it's complete fraud for him to show up.
Just a glory seeker. It's just going there to have yet another photograph taken. You know, they call him Never Ear Keir, don't they?
They do,
you know? And it's absolutely right. I think the day-to-day drudgery, as he sees it, of running this country, because he knows it is riddled with problems, deep, deep concerns that his appalling cabinet are not able to sort out, is why he wants to place himself on the international scene all the time. It's a deflection tactic.
Yeah.
It stops people. People see him, think, oh, yeah, another international achievement of some description, which deflects people from asking him the hard questions about why is this once great nation turning into such a tip.
But imagine just for a moment if he wasn't there, right? If the opposite of that is he's in the UK the whole time, we'd be going, why is our Prime Minister not there?
Well, I mean, I'd like to see
why aren't we punching above our weight? Why aren't we represented on the world stage, we would all say? We'd be appalling.
Well, look, while we've got time, I really want to talk about this story because it caught my eye. It's on the front page of the Telegraph here, and it says, intelligence on the Chinese embassy was left out of an official review. These stories are stacking up and up and up, aren't they? So British intelligence agencies were prevented from directly submitting spying concerns about the Chinese super embassy in London. You know, Leo, it just looks like China have got such an incredible hold on our country, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also looks terrible for Labour and Keir Starmer, to be honest. I mean, Keir has, you know, a lot of people in Labour have sort of dubious links with communism. I know he went to, was it Czechoslovakia on holiday? Keir Starmer.
Went to Czechoslovakia on holiday. Well, lots of people have done that.
Not now. When it was the Soviet Union.
That's right, yes. It was something like that. It was something like that. Yes, he was. That's correct, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to check the details, but I'm pretty sure that's where he went.
I got engaged in Prague. It's a perfectly nice
Well,
city.
that doesn't surprise me. We've got him red-handed.
It's not the same now. It's a Western European country.
Okay.
Like when there was the Soviet Union, I think that's different.
Yeah.
That's like, you know, and so the links with China and the fact that so many rules seem to have been bent for China and things hushed up, this is very, very worrying.
And here's a very damaging line from this article, which reads, "The Telegraph can reveal the UK's intelligence agencies have been prevented from submitting concerns to the government about spying in the embassy," the proposed new Chinese embassy, "because their evidence would also be disclosed to Beijing."
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What lunacy.
It's total lunacy, isn't it? It's total lunacy. And this is the problem I've got with it all, is because we do seem to, because of the terrible state of our country's economic growth, because nobody seems to be able to do anything about it, we are having to go cap in hand to these awful dictators who don't have any goodwill to this country and are very, very happy for us to be under their thumb. And I just think it's embarrassing.
It says here that Starmer was assessed by the Czech secret police to be an MI6 operative when he went to Czechoslovakia. So there you go.
Can't win, no, you can't win again, yeah. Well, you certainly can't for this country, that's for sure. There's another little story here, just very, very brief comments on this one, because ministers are ordering a crackdown on hate preachers, according to the Daily Telegraph. So, hate preachers will be barred from leadership roles at mosques and Islamic centres under an anti-Semitism crackdown to be unveiled by ministers. This is, of course, Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, Leo. Welcome news, perhaps.
Well, why wasn't it done 30 years ago?
Yeah.
And also, why aren't these, if there are mosques where hate preaching is allowed, that are producing people who have appalling opinions who then go out and commit horrific crimes, why aren't they being shut down? Why aren't they being shut down and removed from society completely?
Yeah, because Peter, Saudi Arabia, they ban this. They record the meetings in mosques because they know there's so much extremism happening. That's how they stop it. We should have done this a long time ago.
This country is sleepwalking towards a holy war. End of.
Paul?
Well, I think you need to crack down, and I think Lisa Nandy's doing the right thing with this. And we saw that woman cutting the yellow ribbons, didn't we? You know,
we did.
Anti-Semitism on the streets.
Yeah.
You have to tackle it, absolutely.
Yeah, it seems like we've been far too weak on this issue for far too long. And I don't care which government it is. I think we do need a crackdown on this. And we've reported on these things on GB News quite regularly, where we've seen extremism in mosques and other places, hate preaching, and nothing ever changes. That's why we have to keep on reporting on it, don't we?
Can you imagine if there was a far-right club that was allowed to operate and they're like, oh, but, you know, from now on you're not allowed to have the most extreme far-right Nazis.
This is the problem, isn't it? It's one rule for everyone else and a different rule for the
And it is so prevalent and so easy to find on social media.
Yeah,
these imams spouting absolute hate and threats of taking over as their avowed intention.
Well, that is all we have time for. I'll be back tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Up next, The Late Show Live by the one and only Ben Leo.
Tonight on The Late Show Live, Prince Andrew, is it time he is finally, for once and for all, exiled from the royal family, stripped of his royal titles, given the boot out of the great lodge in Royal Windsor Park where he lives with Fergie, and banished from the kingdom forever? Big bombshell news tonight breaking about his involvement with Epstein. I've also been spending time in Philadelphia, a special report on the drug situation, which could soon be coming to the UK. I'll see you in a few seconds.
There's just 3 weeks left to see how you could be our biggest winner this year. First, you could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This luxury vehicle comfortably sleeps 4, has its own fitted kitchen and bathroom areas, and comes complete with fitted awning and bicycle rack. And that's not all, as we'll also give you a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray, are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it. Don't get us on the BBC. Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. I'm going to do now, they are throwing things up the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show. It's not a bad brand. Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What does she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here at GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question, if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tonight on The Late Show Live, is it about time after these bombshell Andrew revelations that the Duke of York was sent to the Tower of London? And I've also spent one of the most humbling days of my life in Philadelphia.